The Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour was never just another variety show. It was a cultural battleground, a sharp-witted rebellion packaged in jokes and folk songs that poked fun at the establishment at a time when America desperately needed someone to speak up. In the turbulent late 1960s, when the Vietnam War raged, civil rights protests filled the streets and youth culture questioned everything their parents told them was true. Tom and Dick's mother stood on the CBS soundstage, strumming guitars and delivering punchlines that often carried more political firepower than any speech from the steps of the Capitol. They were two clean-cut brothers in matching suits who managed to slip razor blades into their comedy, cutting deep into politics, censorship, and the uncomfortable truths of the day. But while the brothers were known for their scripted barbs and biting commentary, it was an unscripted moment, a blooper that slipped past the censors and aired completely unedited that would go down as one of the most shocking, hilarious, and revealing moments in television history. To understand why this scene mattered so much, you have to go back to how the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour even survived as long as it did under the thumb of CBS's nervous executives. From the show's very first episodes in 1967, Tom and Dick pushed the envelope further than anyone expected. At first, CBS thought they'd hired a pair of safe, goofy folk singers. Tom was the dumb brother, the one who never quite got the joke, while Dick played the straight man, exasperated and incredulous, the audience's stand-in whenever Tom veered off into absurdity. But behind that comedic act, the brothers were brilliantly strategic. They knew that laughter made people let down their guard. While other shows tiptoed around the headlines, the Smothers Brothers turned them into punchlines. They invited controversial guests like folk singer Pete Seeger, who'd been blacklisted for nearly a decade for his political beliefs. They made fun of President Lyndon B. Johnson's policies on Vietnam, mocked the censorship they faced, and encouraged young people to question what they were told. Each week, CBS's Standards and Practices team pored over scripts, demanding cuts and rewrites. The brothers fought back, sometimes filming risky material twice, a clean version for the censors and the version they hoped would air. It was a high act of artistic freedom versus corporate fear. And for a while, the Smothers Brothers were winning. But no matter how carefully they planned, live taping always carried risk. On one now infamous night, in early 1969, they were filming a sketch that involved a musical guest, a routine that seemed harmless on paper, but was a powder keg in the studio. The bit started normally. Tom, playing the clueless host, asked an innocent question about the guest's song. The guest, a counterculture comedian known for his irreverent improvisation, responded with an offhand joke about the war, something about napalm and draft dodgers. It drew nervous laughs from the studio audience, but Tom, ever the pro, decided to keep pushing. He ad-libbed another line, a mocking jab at a prominent government figure that clearly hadn't been approved. Dick shot him a look, the universal big brother look of, "What the hell are you doing?" But Tom plowed on, riffing on the hypocrisy of politicians who sent young men to die while their own kids dodged service. The guest, emboldened, fired back with a line that was even more outrageous. So outrageous, in fact, that a stage handoff camera dropped a prop, shattering the illusion of a polished production. In the chaos, the comedian swore, accidentally or maybe on purpose, a four-letter word that in 1969 simply didn't make it to air, ever. Tom cracked up. Dick buried his face in his hands. The audience roared with laughter, stunned at what they just heard. The cameras kept rolling. Normally, this would have been the moment when the censors swooped in. The tape would be spliced, the offending word cut out, maybe the whole bit scrapped. But the brothers, always one step ahead, had built such a tight turnaround schedule that the episode went to the network with almost no time to preview. The editors under the gun to meet airtime overlooked the blooper. Or maybe they chose to overlook it. Some say a sympathetic editor wanted to see if CBS would dare air something so raw. And so the scene broadcast exactly as it was. Profanity, political jabs, and all. Viewers at home were stunned. Rumors spread immediately. Did I just hear what I think I heard? Did Tom really call out that senator by name? Was that a real swear? Word on primetime TV. For weeks, letters poured into CBS, some praising the brothers for their honesty, others demanding their heads. It was a blooper, by definition, unscripted, unexpected. But it was also the Smothers Brothers at their most authentic, telling the truth in a moment when the truth was dangerous. That single unedited scene turned into a shoit. CBS executives, already exasperated by the constant battles, finally found their excuse. They leaned on the obscenity of the slip to justify canceling the show outright despite its popularity and critical acclaim. The brothers fought back with lawsuits, public statements, and open letters accusing the network of political censorship. They argued that the blooper was emblematic of everything they stood for: honesty, transparency, and the refusal to bow to sanitized, corporate-friendly versions of reality. For fans, that unedited blooper became a symbol. It wasn't just a funny outtake. It was proof that the Smothers Brothers were exactly who they claimed to be: Artists who believed comedy could and should hold power to account. It proved that live TV, with all its risks, still had the capacity to shock a nation out of its complacency. The fallout from that moment shaped the future of television comedy. It emboldened a new generation of comics, George Carlin, Richard Pryor, Lenny Bruce's disciples, to push language and content even further. It paved the way for Saturday Night Live, which debuted a few years later. Wearing its own raw edges and unpredictability like a badge of honor, the Smothers Brothers themselves paid the price. Blacklisted by CBS, they struggled to find another network willing to take a chance on their unfiltered voices. Dick turned to acting, Tom to writing and smaller projects, but they never quite regained the national stage they once commanded. Even so, they never regretted it. In interviews decades later, Tom would grin when asked about that scene. He'd shrug and say, "The cameras don't lie." And Dick, ever the straight man, would add, "Except when the editors let them tell the truth." Fans who watch that blooper today, grainy footage passed around on social media uploaded to YouTube by diehards, see something more than an accidental swear word. They see a time capsule of defiance. They see two brothers who refused to play by the rules, who cracked jokes in the face of war, who sang folk songs about peace while the world burned. They see a reminder that comedy at its best isn't safe. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be a mirror, a hammer, a window, and sometimes, when you're lucky, a blooper that shows you exactly how fragile the illusion really is. That's why more than 50 years later, people still look back at that single unedited moment on the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour and feel something stir inside them, a dangerous, beautiful, necessary thing called truth. It's the reason generations of comics, from Steve Martin to Dave Chappelle, still name-check Tom and Dick when asked about their heroes, because they know that in the business of laughter, sometimes the raw, uncut moments are the ones that change everything. Subscribe to Hollywood Untold for more emotional stories behind music legends and the feuds that shaped rock history. Tap the bell to never miss a